Hello, everybody. Welcome to CliftonStrengths. Today we're going to be talking about unpacking your top five. My name is Holguin. I am an associate director in the Office of Student Involvement, and I am also a certified CliftonStrengths coach. Before you continue watching this video, just make sure you have taken the CliftonStrengths assessment, as some of this stuff may not make sense right away. This presentation is really meant to help you unpack the reports that you received, and again, going into your top five and etc. So this presentation is going to cover a little bit about what CliftonStrengths is, what your top five is, and how you can start using them. This is meant to be an introductory presentation. And then also, if you have any questions, just please feel free to reach out to me via email. I'll provide my contact information as we go through the presentation as well. So without further ado, I'll get right into the presentation, and just give me 1 second while I pull up the PowerPoint. All right. So CliftonStrengths. One quote that I like to start out with is, "What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared with what lies within us." So it's just something to keep in mind as you're going through this presentation and just as you're reading through strengths. So my top five are relator, ideation, maximizer, strategic, and individualization. Some of you might share some of these top five with me, but some of you also might be wondering what some of these words even mean. Like when I first took it, I didn't even know individualization was a word. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So CliftonStrengths has been at Holy Cross for over a decade. As you can see, it started in 2001, the assessment itself, and then it came to Holy Cross in 2007. We've really been able to highlight CliftonStrengths a little bit more in the last 5 years or so. So we've been really excited about the work we've been doing with that. Some of you can see some of the logos I've changed to, and it's called CliftonStrengths, Strengths Quest, Strengths Finder. There's a bunch of different names. They've gone through some rebranding over the years, but as long as it has strengths in it, it's the same assessment. So the assessment itself is based over 40 years of Gallup research. So Gallup is the organization that created this assessment. There are 34 themes to give this assessment a common language. So you'll hear me use the word theme and strengths interchangeably. What makes them strengths is when you invest time into it. So we all possess all 34, but today we'll be focusing on your top five, just to be able to really focus on what you do well. And then this is also based on developmental positive psychology. Some of you, while you probably took the assessment, you probably thought it was really, really long. So there was 177 questions on it. And some of you also might have been wondering why they asked you the same question multiple times or rephrase the question. So the reason that is because they wanted to make sure that they are getting your top of mind response and they're not giving you too long to respond to certain questions. That's why each question is timed at 20 seconds. And then this last line, what it means is that less than 30% of the questions were between two choices. You usually had more than two options to choose between. And before I get into a little bit of the strengths themselves or the themes, I just want to talk a little bit about what really sets strengths apart from other personality assessments. So some of you might have taken personality assessment quizzes or etc., whether it's on BuzzFeed or something else like maybe like Myers-Briggs or a DISC assessment, etc. So the way I want to phrase it is, if you're like in a house, an assessment like Myers-Briggs might tell you what room in a house you're in, and what strengths is telling you is what potential object in that room you're in. So it's a little bit more specific and unique to yourself, and I'll tell you a little bit more why that is as we go through the presentation. So these are just somebody's random 34 strengths. So as you can see, we all have them just in a different order. And what we're doing today is focusing on your top five. So these are the things that you subconsciously do on a day-to-day basis, or also just in general, and you spend little to no energy on. So the way I want you to think about strengths is energy-wise, if that makes sense. So if I told you right now to take a piece of paper and write your name 5 times, you'd probably be able to do that really quick. Now, if I told you to do the same thing but with your opposite hand, you would still be able to do it. It would just take you a little bit longer and might not look as nice. So in that way, I want you to think about strengths. So the ones towards your top are the ones that you can do without thinking, aka just like you just wrote your name 5 times. And the ones towards the bottom are the ones that you can still do. It just takes you a little bit more. So again, like if you were writing your name 5 times with your non-dominant hand. Knowing that you don't have all 34, we will just be focusing on your top 5 today. And then as I'll pull up a couple of resource sheets so that you can look at as well. But all 34 of these are broken up into 4 different domains. So you have your executing. So these are people with dominant executing themes that know how to make things happen. Then you have your influencing domain, which are people with dominant influencing themes that know how to take charge, speak up, and make sure that the team is heard. Then you have your relationship building domain, which is people with dominant relationship building themes have the ability to build stronger relationships that can hold the team together and make the team greater than the sum of its parts. And then you have strategic thinking. So these are people with the dominant theme that help teams consider what they could absorb and analyze information that can inform better decisions. So these domains themselves are pretty self-explanatory. And as you can see, most of the stuff that CliftonStrengths provide is color-coded, so you can associate the strength with a certain domain. And as you can see, you could probably, if you print it out or just like take a screenshot of this, you could probably circle the ones in your top 5 and try to see which domains are a little bit more present for you. A couple of things that I want you to think about is, or not think about, depending on how you feel about it, is some of you might have a little bit more of your top 5 in a certain domain, or not, or you're missing maybe 1 or maybe 2. You also might have 4 in one domain and then just 1 in another domain. So I don't want you to worry too much about that. Again, everybody has 34 of these strengths and just in different order. So if you have 1 in each domain, awesome. But then also if you have like 4 in relationship building and then 1 in strategic thinking, just know that you can get things done, right? Like you wouldn't be where you are today if you couldn't get things done or be able to influence people. So for me, for example, in my top 5, I don't have any executing, but again, I wouldn't be where I am if I couldn't get things done. And the likelihood is whatever domain is missing in your top 5, there's a very strong likelihood that it is between your 6 and 10. So again, don't worry too much about that, but just something to talk about and to bring up as well. The sheets really quick that I want to bring up are the quick reference card. So this gives you all 34 strengths and a short definition of each one. So again, even if you don't have all your 34 strengths in front of you, you could probably take a look at this and try to guess which ones might be your number 6, which one might be your number 10, and which ones might be towards the bottom. So for me, for example, woo down here, which stands for winning others over, I probably could have told you that was probably going to be towards the bottom for me, just because I tend to associate that with being very extroverted. Although there are people that are introverts that have woo, it just appears in a different way. So again, you can go through the sheet, try to guess, but also it's just more there as a reference. And then also a sheet describing the domains, which we just went over. So both of these sheets will be available on the Bringing the Hill to You website. But if you need or want these emailed to you, just please reach out to me. Again, my contact information will be available following this presentation. All right, back to the PowerPoint. So This chart over here was taken or created in 2016, so it was really a poll to see which ones or which top 5 were the most popular within the U.S. So as you can see, achiever, which is really for somebody who likes to get things done, who's a high achieving person, etc. As you can see, the other top choices in people's top 5 are reflected in this chart. So I will say this is a moment where people can pause the video and read through some of these statistics. I will go through it a little quick just to give a little synopsis on it. So this is really talking about the research on strengths, on engagement, and productivity. So all of that found that the more likely that you are to engage or focus on what you do well, you're more likely to be engaged in what you like to do. You're more likely to talk about it. You're more likely to enjoy the job that you're doing. And as you can see kind of in that last line, when organizations focus on its employees' strengths, 73% of the employees report engagement versus those that don't. So again, you can pause the video, take a couple minutes to read through this. So some of you might be wondering too, after you took the assessment, maybe you're not happy with your top 5, or you're saying like, I want to take this again. So unfortunately, as an HC student, you can only take the assessment once. But just to give some overview on what that means, like if you were to take it, tomorrow, a couple weeks from now, even a year, or like 5 years from now, the reality is that about 75% of your strengths would stay the same across the board. So what that means is about, let's say in your top 5, you might get a couple new ones, like maybe 2 or 3. But the ones that are leaving your top 5 are probably going to your 6 through 10. And then the new ones that you would get were probably somewhere in between, like your 6 through 15, maybe. So again, this is just on research that Gallup has done over the years, over the decades. And then as I've personally seen people that have taken it, 10 years apart, or taken the assessment 10 years apart, and they've gotten a couple new ones. But at the end of the day, if they knew they're 34, it was still like 75% would stay the same. And the reason this is because this assessment is trying to take into consideration your long-standing patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior. So your persistent nature. There are a few instances where your strengths could drastically change. So what I mean by drastically, I mean like your number 34 going into your top 5, or your number 29 being like number 2 or something like that. So one of the reasons that might happen is if you had a significant life change. So that looks different for a lot of people. So I'm thinking of a major event in your life that really changed your outlook on life in general, or how you think. So that would be one of the reasons why you might see a drastic change. So the purpose of this presentation and this whole assessment is really to focus on you. So questions that you might have heard before when focusing on you, what do you prefer to be called? What do you get paid to do? What do you do well? What's one positive thing that, people use to describe you? So as we start to transition into your reports, you'll start to see that the language being used might be things that you've heard people describe you as, but you necessarily might not have thought about it before. So this is an activity that I like to do when we're live in person. But I do encourage you to look through this because it really sets into perspective kind of like those everything day things that we do that we just don't think about, right? And that's what I want you to think at your top 5 as. So some people like to talk to people on elevators and airplanes, but some people hate it when people talk to them on elevators and airplanes, right? I think anybody that's watching, you're either or, I would think. But again, same thing with the next one. Some people push the elevator button to remind them that, they're there. Whether that works or not, it's up to every person. But then also some people get bugged when people do that. So again, things that, you just do, you don't think about like, oh, I'm going to go press the elevator button, or, I'm going to actively, say that this bothers me. Like you don't think about that. You just do it. So that's how we want you to think about your top 5. So as I mentioned, you can read through the rest of them as well. But yeah, so according to Gallup, the key to success is to fully understand how you apply your greatest talents and strengths in your everyday life. So how we do that is, I was talking about what makes a theme a strength, or what makes your talent a strength. And what that is when you invest time into it. So today we're really investing time in your self-awareness of these strengths. So that's the first step in building your strengths. So being aware of your weaknesses and managing them, but your greatest opportunity for success lies in building on your natural talents. So now I want to show a quick video on just talking about how to apply your greatest talents into your everyday life.
Is zillion a real number? No, zillion's not a real number, but it is a word you might be tempted to use if you tried to list all the talents found among humankind. Creating a list of every talent is an impossible task, but if you step back, you'll see that talents often have something in common, a theme that connects them. Some talents, like a natural tendency to share thoughts, to create engaging stories, and to find the perfect word, relate directly to communication. That's what they have in common, their theme. So to begin thinking and talking about them, we can call them communication talents. The CliftonStrengths Finder measures the presence of talent in 34 general areas or themes. Your CliftonStrengths Finder report includes a ranked listing of the 5 themes that hold your most dominant talents, your signature themes. Similar to your fingerprint, the sequence of your themes is unique to you. The odds that someone has the same 5 signature themes in the same order as you are 1 in 33 million. You heard right, 1 in 33 million. Your report is a beginning, not an end. Take this opportunity to explore your talents, harness their power, and bring them to life every day. Try this. First, name it. To begin making your signature themes your own, grab a highlighter. Carefully consider each theme description in your report. Highlight words and phrases that specifically resonate with you. You'll know you're highlighting the right things when you hear yourself say, "That's me." Next, claim it. Post your signature themes and the words or phrases you have highlighted in a place where you'll see them every day. Share your report with people close to you. Ask for their reaction. Then, aim it. Pick one of your signature themes and think about it for a day. Ask yourself, how can I use this theme today? Where can this theme make a positive difference in my life today? Begin to flex this theme by using the action items provided in your report to hone your talents into strengths. Like muscles, strengths can wither if they're not exercised regularly. What will be your daily practice to stay in tip-top shape? Once you are deliberately using this theme every day, focus on another signature theme. As you start to flex each of your signature themes, you'll find ways to build on your greatest areas of potential. Our talents are an instinctive and intuitive source of wisdom and power. When we begin to intentionally tap into this power, we gain the ability to transform every moment, every interaction, and every day. You have dynamic talents just waiting to be unlocked and developed. Use your CliftonStrengths Finder report to name, claim, and aim your signature themes.
Awesome. So that video is really talking, or gave really a summary of a lot of what I've been talking about. But what we're doing today is creating or learning like a basic language of talent and what strengths is. So now I want to get a little bit into your reports. So once you have taken the assessment, what you have in front of you is the screen that should pop up. This is what your portal or dashboard should look like. So as you can see, like in the middle, you'll have your top 5, just short descriptions. And then on the right-hand side, or upper right-hand side, is what I want to focus on today, but just in general. So you have a lot of, or a couple different reports. So you have your signature themes report. So this report is a pretty general report that is meant more so for just general conversation. So when the video was talking about the 1 in 33 million chance that somebody has the exact same top 5 as you in the same order, this report doesn't really talk to that as much as the uniqueness. Again, this is more for a conversation. Then going into the second report, which is my favorite one to work with, is the insights report. And this one is the one that talks to your uniqueness. This is the one that you should be focusing on. So again, the strengths insight report. Now this talks to your uniqueness. So for example, I have strategic in my top 5, right? Like let's say you, the viewer, or whoever's watching has strategic in their top 5 as well. Our definition in this report would look completely different. If we were reading our signature themes report, it would look exactly the same. So again, in the insight report, if we both had strategic, it would look completely different. The reason that is because this report not only pulls from the other strengths in your top 5, but your overall 34. So when you're reading it, you might see some connections there of like, for me, it's like, how does the relator play into the strategic? So just something to keep in mind as you are reading this report. So again, the insight one talks to your uniqueness. And one of the reasons it's my favorite one to work with is because this report gives you a lot of good language to talk about yourself. So if you're thinking about interviews, if you're thinking about resume cover letters, any situation that you have to talk about yourself, elevator pitch maybe, this is a good opportunity for you to dive into this report and pull some language from it. There's often times where we might, come up with a thought, but not necessarily know how to articulate it. And this report gives you a lot of good language to be able to articulate, certain things about yourselves. There's also certain things in the report where you might have heard, like, a family member, a friend, describe you as, but you're like, no, that's not really me. Just some of the things to think about as you're reading through this report. And then thirdly, the third report you would have is the strength insights plus action planning. So this report is really the insights report plus potential action steps that you could take with the report, or with your strengths, sorry. So again, these 3 great reports, but really focus on the strengths insight report. And then that's the one I'm gonna actually ask you to work on today. So what I want you to do is, take your insights report, either if you have printed it out or just online, and I want you to be able to read through it. You can access it through your portal. And what I want you to do is I want you to highlight the phrases and sentences that you strongly relate to. So if you're reading through this and you're saying like, this is 100% me, or, maybe this is a little creepy, I don't know how this report knows this about me, that's what I want you to highlight. And then I want you to like star or underline anything that maybe you don't understand. These are really the moments where I would say, reach out to me. Let's set up a one-on-one session and like we can unpack your report a little bit more. And just some questions to consider. What was the impression of your report? And then did any part of your report surprise you? So just quickly before you start reading this, a couple of things to think about is, it's pretty rare for someone to have all 5 strengths in one domain. It does happen. There's a few students at HC that do have that. And it's a great thing to consider of like, how do you apply, if all 5 of yours are in relationship building, like how does that influence like the other domains? And then the other things to consider too is like the part where I said, if you're highlighting certain things that you're like, I don't know how this knows or how this assessment knows this about me, just think about like, the assessment that you took. It was pretty in depth, and it might be something that you strongly relate to. And I think that's only going to help you see the benefit in going through this report. So again, right now I'd ask you to hit pause on the video, take something like 10-15 minutes or however long you need to read through this report, highlight it, and then come back to it. All right, so after you read through your report, I just want to give a little bit more information on the domain. So pretty straightforward again, and when you have your executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. So the people that like to think, again, just for reference, relationship people, the people that thrive on those one-on-one connections, executing, the people that like to get things done, and influencing, people who are able to influence their team and then sell their ideas and etc. So something I'm going to talk about really quick is a talent map. So what this is usually CliftonStrengths is not just an individual tool, it's also a team tool. So it's usually used to talk about the strengths that people bring to the table. So for a student organization, a department, an office team, etc. So what happens is whenever I give a session to a bigger group is I take everybody's top 5 and I will map it out on a grid, so that everybody can see everybody's top 5, but then also what domains their group is dominant in and maybe which ones they aren't. So the example that I'll give is, this is somebody's top 5, or a group's top 5. So as you can see, they're mapped out pretty spread even, except for like the influencing domain. So the conversation in this instance looked, we dove into the conversation of how can you use your relationship building and executing and strategic thinking to be able to influence others. So again, a lot of these people probably had influencing in their 6 through 10, but we were focusing on our top 5. So we really wanted to focus on how you can elevate the things that you do, how can you use the things that you do very well to elevate something that may not be as dominant or very easy for you to do. So that's something you want to think about as you are unpacking your strengths, learning a little bit more about yourself, is how can you use your top 5 to elevate maybe something that you may not do so well. So now getting towards the end of this, some of Gallup's guiding principles are, the first one being themes are neutral. So these strengths don't make you a good or bad person. You make the strength good or bad. Themes are also not labels. So it's not supposed to, so for example, restorative is one of the strengths, which in short is somebody who likes to fix problems, right? If my friend had restorative, I'm not going to go to that person to solve all my problems every single time. So again, they're not labels. Leading with positive intent, so being able to assume goodwill. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the themes aren't labels. So just because somebody has a certain top 5 doesn't mean that, to think about them in a certain way. I think if somebody, for example, doesn't have relationship building in their top 5, it doesn't mean that they can't build relationships. It doesn't mean that they can't make friends. It's being able to assume this goodwill that, this only enhances somebody and it doesn't necessarily describe who they are as a person. And then the last 2 go hand in hand for me. So differences are advantage and people need one another. So the differences, everybody brings something different to the table. And a uniqueness in that grid that I showed a few minutes ago. If I changed 1 or 2 people, whether I took them out or added 2 new people, that grid would change. So again, just talking to the uniqueness of it. And then people needing one another, as you can see, everybody doesn't have the exact same top 5 or the same 34 strengths. So everybody helps elevate each other. So just something to think about. And then lastly, how can you use this? So I mentioned some of this already, but just to reiterate it, you can use this on interviews, on goal setting, academics, just life in general, and then also one-on-one coaching sessions. So this is something I've been mentioning throughout the presentation, but I do want to stress that if you are looking to unpack your report a little bit more or have certain questions, please reach out to me. So I have my email at the bottom, or you could just look up Chris Holguin on the HC or through Gmail or etc. Again, I work in the Office of Student Involvement, located on the second floor of Hogan. And just want to reiterate that I am available to meet with anybody if they would like. But yeah, so with that said, that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to hearing from a lot of you. I hope this was able to help y'all unpack the report a little bit. And like I mentioned, please reach out to me if you need anything. All right, thank you.